Nia Mambaku sat quietly on the wide balcony of her grand estate overlooking Oberpearl Coast, her fingers wrapped around a crystal goblet filled with deep red palm wine. The breeze whispered through silk curtains as she gazed at the golden sunset. She had everything a woman could crave: opulence, elegance, and unshakable influence. Nia was the wife of Chief Jengo Mbaku, one of the wealthiest men in all of Zuwara City. His empire stretched far and wide, real estate holdings, oil fields, and transport ventures all bearing his name. Wealth flowed into their lives like the river Nzua during flood season, never ceasing, always abundant. Though Nia was nearing her 40s, she still turned heads. She hadn't been born into riches. She married into them. Yet no amount of gold or silk ever truly satisfied her. There was always a restless hunger in her chest, a storm that whispered, "More." And now, with Jengo growing frail, the time was near. He had suffered a terrible stroke the year before, and though he was slowly recovering, the air around him now carried the scent of endings. Nia knew the moment was coming, and when it did, she would not stand aside. No one, not even blood, would take what she believed was hers. One morning, Nia glided down the hallway and paused near the carved wooden door of Chief Jengo's private study. Her ears perked up as she caught the murmur of voices inside. The lawyer, Mr. Kamau, was seated across from her husband, and then she heard it. That word, will. Her heart pounded like a festival drum. Chief Jengo's voice was weak but clear. Tunde will inherit everything. Nia stiffened. Her hands curled into fists so tight her rings bit into her skin. Tunde. The name burned. Jengo's son from another woman. A boy she had tolerated for too long. She had pleaded, manipulated, charmed, done everything to sway her husband's decision. But he had always stood firm. Mr. Kamau's voice followed. Nia will be well taken care of. Her stomach churned. Well taken care of. As if she were some cast-off concubine or poor widow. She wasn't some woman lingering in the shadows. She was his wife, the mistress of this house. She deserved it all. If Chief Jengo thought she would watch his bastard son snatch the throne she had guarded all these years, then he truly did not understand her. She moved away from the study door, fury rising like steam from boiling yam. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. Tunde! After all these years of patience, of lying next to a man twice her age and feigning warmth, pretending to care. And now, all of it for nothing? She clenched her fists again, harder, her nails dug deep into her palms. She needed clarity. No, she needed a plan. As soon as Mr. Kamau departed, she floated into the study with a practiced smile. Chief Jengo looked up at her, his eyes sharp even in his weary body. His once broad frame was now fragile like dry bark, and his speech had slowed, but his mind had not dulled. She approached and laid a soft hand on his shoulder. "My love, you should be resting," she cooed. "You know how stress troubles your heart." His eyes narrowed. "Nia, I know you were listening. I know you were—" She blinked, painting innocence across her face. "Listening to what?" He sighed, the sound heavy. "My decision is final. Tunde will lead the legacy, and you will have all you need." That cursed phrase again. All you need. It tasted like sour ogbono in her mouth, as if she were one of the house girls or a forgotten mistress in a dusty city flat. She lowered herself onto the leather seat across from him, legs crossing with grace, her eyes unwavering. "Jengo," she said, voice honeyed, "you know I've stood beside you every day, through every season. You know the things I've given up for you, for this family." His face remained unreadable. "I also know how dearly you treasure wealth, Nia." She flinched. "I married you because I loved you, and I married you because I needed a queen at my side," he replied slowly. "But I was never blind to who you really are." Her blood boiled. Chief Jengo had always been calculating. That was his power, but now his age was catching up, his body had betrayed him. That would be his undoing. That night, as the moon rose like a ghostly eye above the estate, Nia made a call. Her voice was low and sharp. Dig into Tunde and his mother? Everything. Mr. Mosi, the private investigator, didn't ask questions. He knew better. By dawn, a leather-bound folder arrived. Inside, Tunde Okoro, 27, a sharp mind honed in the United Kingdom. A lawyer who had just returned to Zuwara to step into the sun his father had held for decades. Nia stared at the file. Her lips curled into a quiet, dangerous smile. Tunde. Okoro had returned to Zuwara and was now living with his mother, Auntie Ife, in the quiet Ikoi district, a place far removed from the loud heartbeat of the city, and Nia Mbaku hated everything about it. Her lips twisted in silent disgust as she thought about Ife, the woman who had once been Chief Jengo's secret mistress, tucked away in the shadows before he married Nia. For years, Ife had lived simply, quietly, raising her son far from wealth and influence. But now Jengo wanted to bring her boy into the empire, into the heart of the legacy Nia had spent years curating with ambition and patience, and she would never let that happen. The very next day, dressed in calm rage, Nia arrived uninvited at Ife's modest duplex. The older woman was startled, but held her ground as Nia swept into the room without waiting to be asked in, her eyes scanning the humble furnishings with silent judgment before she smiled coldly and said, "Long time, Ife?" The older woman stiffened and asked what brought her here, but Nia ignored the question and ran her fingers along the arm of a faded chair, then casually dropped, "Congratulations are in order. Your son is about to become a billionaire." Ife's face darkened instantly, and she said calmly, "Please, Nia, let's not do this." But Nia laughed softly, the sound like a knife sliding out of its sheath, and asked whether Ife ever regretted not fighting for Jengo long ago, whether walking away had been worth it. When Ife said nothing, Nia leaned in, her voice low and poisonous, and told her to convince Tunde to reject the inheritance, saying it was for his own good. Ife's eyes widened, and when she refused, saying the will was final, and her son would accept what was rightfully his, Nia's smile faded, and her gaze fell on a framed photo of Ife and Tunde, which she picked up slowly before whispering, "It would be a shame if something happened to him." Ife's voice rose with alarm as she asked, "Are you threatening my son?" But Nia simply placed the photo back and turned to leave, her words floating in the air like smoke. "Take care, Ife. Zuwara can be a dangerous place." That night, Nia made a quiet call, and later sat inside a black SUV with Gambo, a man known for removing problems without a trace. He asked if it would be messy, and Nia, after a thoughtful pause, replied that she didn't want blood. Just disappearance, no questions, no trail, no body. Gambo nodded, and Nia breathed deeply, imagining a future with no Tunde, no competition, no threat, just her and the Empire. But unknown to her, the game had already shifted, and in a silent hotel room tucked within Victoria Island, Tunde Okoro sat watching a video on his laptop, a hidden recording of Nia's threats to his mother and her secret meeting with Gambo, all caught by someone he had planted after Ife warned him of Nia's visit. As the screen dimmed, Tunde smiled bitterly. He now knew the full extent of her desperation. Meanwhile, back in her room glittering with wine and silk, Nia felt triumphant, convinced that by morning Tunde would be out of her way for good. Just another forgotten name, just another problem removed. She sipped her wine with satisfaction, her thoughts buzzing with power and pride, until her phone vibrated with Gambo's name flashing across the screen. She answered sharply, asking if the task was done, but the silence on the other end cracked the calm in her chest. Then came Gambo's deep voice. "Madam, we have a problem." Nia sat up straight, her heart freezing mid-beat, and asked what problem. Gambo hesitated before admitting, "The boy never showed. Someone warned him. He's gone." Nia's fingers clenched around the phone, her voice sharp with rage as she demanded how they could lose him, but Gambo could only murmur that someone else was playing a bigger game, someone with eyes just as sharp. Nia's breath grew heavy. Something was wrong and she knew it. "Find out who's helping him," she ordered coldly, "and when you do, call me." If she couldn't remove the boy, then she would burn the will instead, erase it all. No loose ends, no second chances. 2 days later, wearing a smile sweet as poisoned honey, Nia walked into Chief Jengo's study. where he sat slumped in his wheelchair but fully aware with Mr. Kamau seated beside him, ready to listen, ready to sign, and completely unaware of the storm she was about to unleash. Mr. Kamau sat beside, Chief Django holding the final copy of the will, when Nia stepped forward, her smile calm but her eyes gleaming with fire, and placed a hand gently on her husband's frail shoulder, whispering, "My love, you look exhausted. Let me take care of this." Django studied her with a long, knowing stare before giving a slow nod, and as Nia turned to Kamau, she extended her hand, with graceful confidence. "Let me see the documents." The lawyer hesitated, glancing at Django for reassurance, and with a weary nod from the chief, he handed her the thick envelope, sealed with the future of an empire. The moment it touched her fingers, Nia smiled as if she had just touched destiny itself, and without pause she strode toward the fireplace that flickered warmly in the study. Then, before anyone could move, she threw the will into the fire. The flames swallowed the envelope with a crackle, and the room was filled with the sharp scent of burning paper, as black ash rose like curses in the air. "Nia, what have you done?" Django cried out, summoning every last breath of strength he had. Nia turned slowly to face him, her eyes burning like coals. "I did what had to be done," she said coldly. "That will was a mistake. And you know it." Mr. Kamau's face went pale with shock. "That was the only copy. You just destroyed everything." But Nia's smirk deepened as she stepped closer, voice low and dripping with manipulation. "Then I suppose there is no more will, is there?" Django's face twisted in rage, but Nia was already spinning her next web. "You're my husband," she said, voice silk hiding steel. "Everything you built, it belongs to us. Why divide it?" The chief's breathing grew ragged, and he clutched his chest as if his heart were cracking. Alarmed, Nia called out for the nurse as he was wheeled out of the room, his body failing, but her mind at peace. The will was gone. Now all she had to do was wait for the inevitable. What she didn't know was that Tunda was already 3 moves ahead. The very next evening, Nia lounged on her velvet chaise, swirling champagne in her glass when her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello." A voice slid through the speaker, smooth and familiar. "Hello, Nia." Her heart nearly stopped. "Tunde," she said, forcing a calm tone. "What a surprise. I thought you were... well?" Tunde chuckled darkly. "Dead? You really thought it would be that easy, didn't you?" Nia swallowed. Hard. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, but you will," he replied. "Check your email." Her hands trembled as she grabbed her tablet. The inbox held a single message from Tunde. She opened it and the blood drained from her face. There it was, the full video, her threats to Ife, her secret meeting with Gambo, everything. "I have copies," Tunde's voice echoed over the call. "If anything happens to me or my mother, this goes public. You'll be behind bars before you can pour another glass." Nia's hand shook with fury. "You bastard!" she spat. Tunde only laughed. "You should have finished the job when you had the chance." Nia gritted her teeth. "What do you want?" she snapped. A pause. Then his voice returned, calm, cold, and commanding. "Pack your bags. You have 48 hours to disappear. If I see you again, I will ruin you." Nia's heart pounded like thunder. "Chief Django will never allow that," she whispered, reaching for her last thread of control. "My father," Tunde said firmly, "is in the hospital. He no longer has a say. I do." Nia's grip tightened. She had burned the will, but somehow Tunde was still standing, still winning. If he wanted her to vanish, he truly didn't understand who he was dealing with. She wasn't leaving without a war. That same night, she called Gambo again. "David is still a problem," she hissed. Gambo exhaled, tired. "Madam, we already tried." "Then try harder," she snapped. "Find something, a weakness, anything we can use." There was a pause, then Gambo's voice shifted. "Actually, I may have something." Nia's eyes lit with sharp curiosity. "Tell me." The next morning, she sat in a sleek corner of a private lounge at a hotel in Ikoi, sipping coffee with steady hands while waiting for the one person who might hold the key, Auntie Ife. The older woman arrived, looking wary, worn and tense. She took her seat across from Nia and asked, voice guarded, "What do you want now?" Nia smiled sweetly, her mask flawless, and lifted her cup slowly before replying, "To offer you a deal." "A deal?" Ife scoffed, her voice laced with disbelief. "After you threatened my son's life?" But Nia's smile remained untouched, her eyes calm and piercing. "You're a smart woman, Ife," she said smoothly. "You know the truth. Tunde doesn't belong in Django's world. He's too soft for this battle. He should return to his quiet life in the UK, where he's safe, where he belongs." Ife's gaze sharpened, her jaw clenched. "You underestimate him. Tunde is stronger than you think." Nia chuckled coldly. "Is he? Then let's see." She reached into her designer bag and slid a brown envelope across the table. Ife took it reluctantly, and as she opened it, her hands began to tremble. Inside was an aged paternity test, one that claimed Tunde was not Chief Django's biological son. Ife's face drained of color. This isn't real," she murmured. Nia leaned forward, voice like a snake's hiss. "Isn't it?" Ife's fingers clenched the paper. "He never knew," she whispered. "Django never found out," Nia smirked. "Well, he's about to. And tell me, Ife, what do you think will happen when he does?" Ife's breath caught, her throat tightening with dread. "He won't believe." "You, maybe," Nia shrugged. "But doubt is a powerful poison, and I only need one drop." She took a slow sip of her coffee. "So here's my offer. Convince Tunde to walk away. If he leaves all this behind, the secret stays buried." Ife sat frozen, torn between love and fear, and Nia's tone turned dark. "Because I can make him leave the hard way." With that, Nia rose, adjusted her dress, and whispered, "You have 24 hours before walking away, leaving Ife paralyzed by the truth." That night, Ife sat alone in her bedroom, staring at the test. Her greatest secret now turned into a weapon. Years ago, in a time of confusion and vulnerability, she had made a mistake. An affair before her relationship with Django had fully blossomed. He had never known. He had loved Tunde and raised him as his own. But now that past was clawing back, with teeth. If Tunde found out, would it break him? Could she really ask him to give up everything to protect a lie? Tears slid down her cheeks as she made her decision. She would protect her son at any cost. The next morning she met Tunde at a quiet cafe in Victoria Island. The worry on her face was clear. "Mom, what is it?" Tunde asked, concerned. Ife hesitated. "I think you should let this go." "Let what go?" he asked, brow furrowed. "Let Nia have it. The businesses, the money. Just let it go." Tunde stiffened. "Are you serious?" She grabbed his hands. "Please. My son, this fight, it's not worth it." But Tunde pulled back. "She threatened you. She tried to have me killed. And now you want me to walk away?" Ife's eyes welled with tears. "David, trust me, please." He stared at her, eyes sharp with suspicion. "Did she threaten you again?" Ife shook her head quickly. "No, no." But it was too late. Tunde reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone and pressed play. Ife's heart stopped. It was a recording, her conversation with Nia. Word for word, her silence, Nia's threat, the deal. Ife's mouth opened in shock. "Tunde, how?" His voice was cold. "I already knew, Mom." And then, with a slow, painful breath, he added, "So it's true." Her lips trembled. "Please, let me explain." But Tunde was already standing. He turned without a word, walking away as her secret unraveled behind him. Everything was broken, and Nia had won. That night, Nia toasted herself with champagne, basking in victory. She had played her last card and it had worked. Chief Django now knew the truth. Tunde was broken, shaken by betrayal. Soon he would disappear, and the empire would finally belong to her. Or so she thought. Because in the shadows, Django had been quietly watching. Even in his weakness, the old chief's instincts had never dulled. He had seen the way Nia clung to the will, the strange tension that buzzed through the house like bees in panic, the whispering phone calls, the changes in his wife's eyes. He hadn't yet grasped the depth of the betrayal, but he was about to. Late that same night, as he prepared to rest, his trusted assistant entered his room and leaned close. "Sir," he whispered, "there's something you need to see." He placed a file into Django's trembling hands, and everything began to unravel. There it was, staring back at Chief Django Mbaku with the cold finality of truth. The DNA result clearly stated that Tunde Okoro was not his biological son. A 99.9% mismatch. It felt as if the very air had been knocked from Django's lungs. For 27 years, he had poured his love, his guidance, and his entire legacy into this young man, his son in every way but blood. And now, with trembling hands and a heart caving in, he gripped his chest as pain surged through him. Ife had lied. His world, once built on trust and purpose, was now tilting into chaos. Meanwhile, that same morning, Tunde sat silently in his car outside his mother's house, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. The betrayal from Nia had been violent, but the betrayal from his own mother had shattered something deeper. She hadn't just lied. She had built his entire identity on a foundation of silence. And now, with Chief Django holding that truth, everything felt lost. His phone vibrated. A message from Mr. Kamau. "Your father wants to see you. It's urgent." Tunde sighed heavily and started the car. When he arrived at the mansion, the air inside was thick with silence. He entered the study and found Chief Django waiting, eyes heavy and distant. For the first time, Django truly looked at Tunde, through him, past him, into him. And what Tunde saw in his father's eyes wasn't anger, but a deep, cutting sorrow. "Dad," he began, but Django cut him off. "Don't call me that." The word struck like a slap. Tunde flinched but remained standing. Django sighed, the sound old and broken. "I loved you like a son. But now, I don't even know who you are." Tunde's voice was low. "I didn't know either." The silence between them was unbearable. Then slowly Chief Django said, "I don't blame you, but I cannot hand my empire to someone who isn't of my blood." Tunde turned away, chest tightening. He had fought so hard to protect this family's legacy, and now it was slipping through his fingers like dry sand. But Django added softly, "You are still my son in every way that matters. You won't inherit everything, but I'll make sure you're taken care of." Tunde nodded stiffly, a lifetime of pain in a single breath. Later that afternoon, while Nia was still basking in her imagined victory in her private lounge, a knock came at the door. "You have a visitor, ma'am," the assistant announced. She frowned. "Who?" The door opened, and in wheeled Chief Django himself. Her heart stopped. "Darling, you should be resting." "Cut the nonsense," he snapped, voice firm and full of fire. Nia froze as Django's eyes bore into hers. "I know what you did, Nia." She blinked. "I don't—" "The threats, the hired killer, the conspiracy, I know it all." She stood speechless. "I gave you everything, and you tried to murder my son. What kind of woman are you?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. "Pack your things," he said coldly. "You're leaving this house today." She stepped forward, desperate. "Django, please." "Security," he called. 2 guards entered immediately. Nia fell to her knees, her voice shaking. "Please, Django, you can't do this," but he turned away. "Watch me." As the guards dragged her out, her cries echoed through the halls, but he never looked back. Nia Mbaku had burned the will, but in doing so she had burned herself. Months later, Chief Django officially named his new heir, his loyal nephew, a promising young businessman he had quietly mentored for years. Tunde received a generous settlement, enough to live comfortably, but he no longer held a place in the empire he once tried to protect. He could have fought. He could have exposed everything, but he didn't. Instead, he packed his bags and left Zuwara behind. There were no goodbyes, no last looks, just a man walking into a new future, because for the first time in his life, he was no longer the chosen son, and perhaps finally that was exactly what he needed to become who he truly was.